I have finally found the missing piece to a puzzle I have been trying to figure out for quite some time. Many are aware of this place off the western coast of Chile called Easter Island. There have been a lot of stories done about it. They have these giant statues called Moai looking out to the sea. And there has been a lot of theory going around about why they were built, what their purpose was, and what happened to the people that lived on this island, because there were no trees or there were very few, when the Europeans who discovered the island in 1722, remember that date, showed up. They found a group of people that were on the edge, basically, of subsistence. And they wondered how they had survived there for so long. I think I figured it out. It goes to a theory that I've had for a long time that a lot of people have called me crazy for. I truly believe this entire hemisphere was seeded by the natives of Antarctica. Now, many would ask, how could that possibly be? I believe at one time that this area right here, by the Antarctic Peninsula and the tip of South America, was not this far apart. In fact, I believe they were joined together, and that there was a catastrophic disaster that caused a wall of water to move through here. And over time, it's just gotten worse and farther apart and farther apart. I believe this happened as a result of the 1703 Genroku earthquake in Japan. Because it was 1722 when the Europeans found those people on Easter Island. Now, why do I think this? What's my case for it? Well, let's go take a look at some images real quick from the Rapa Nui people that they found. Here was an artist's rendering of these Rapa Nui people. They were very different than people from the mainland of South America. This was a native Rapa Nui woman. Here's an actual photograph of the Rapa Nui people that they found. I believe those Moai were an attempt by these people to contact a civilization that they had coexisted with from Antarctica, that they had lost contact with for some reason, and they didn't know why. This is another picture of a native of the island. Does this guy look South American to you? This is an actual photograph of the man. There's something very different about the people of Easter Island. That earthquake that I'm speaking of, that happened in 1703, was an 8.2 magnitude earthquake, and it killed 108,000 people. Created one of the largest tsunamis the planet has ever seen. This is what I think is the case. Here's another image. Here's the 1677 one. Genroku, it was the end of an era for the Japanese after this earthquake. Everything prior to this, going back to that, I believe this era was called the Genroku era, and after that it was called something else. I'll give you the wiki for this, but what did I find? Why do I think that I have more evidence? It has a little bit to do with the Pentagon network that we have been uncovering. There's a place where the Polynesian network, here, which is where, by the way, the people from Easter Island allegedly came from, French Polynesia, where this network meets the South American network, there is a break right through here, and I cannot explain it. Everything else lines up nearly perfectly. But in this region, something is just amiss with the network. Something is wrong. Something got broken. Now, some time back, I found this location where we found what looked like a very strange deer-like creature next to a skull. Now, this by itself is not really evidence. What's the real tie to Easter Island? Are you ready for this? Let me scroll down to it. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. It's a Moai head sticking up out of the ice in Antarctica. There's no way they missed this. Meaning those who have scoured these images, the CIA or whatever, the NSA. I believe they know this. I believe this is one of the reasons that they are very, very concerned about the melt in Antarctica. Because it's revealing things. It's revealing evidence of a disaster on a planet-wide scale. That there was an earthquake that caused a tsunami that separated Antarctica from the tip of South America. You see, Antarctica is not snowy and icy just because it's at the South Pole. It's snowy and icy to the point of being uninhabitable, at least on the surface, because the ocean has the ability to swirl around it and isolate it at the South Pole. That's what traps that air there. If there were a huge land bridge between Antarctica and South America, those currents wouldn't exist. And if those currents don't exist, the weather patterns don't exist, and the entire, especially Western Antarctica, would be far warmer and more than likely habitable on the surface. I just want to do a quick measure on this with you guys to see how big this is. It's 120 feet tall, which is about 36 meters. And from the tip of the nose to the back of the head is about 28 meters, or about 93 feet. Now, I should have, thinking back, probably pulled up the size of the Moai and see how big they are. But this is pretty clear evidence that ties Antarctic culture to Easter Island culture. The video that we broke down, where we looked at maps going back to the 1500s all the way up to the late 1600s that showed Antarctica attached to South America, then there was a big empty spot where no one was making maps of that region called Tierra del Fuego. Then, after 1703, in the early 1700s, all of a sudden new maps began to appear, but they showed Antarctica. Some of them didn't show Antarctica at all. But the ones that did showed it way farther away. At one time, it had been referred to what they called Magellanica. I have a theory about that, too, that it was actually a nickname. It was a conglomeration of Spanish and Italian, Magallanica, meaning only afloat. But there are other things in this region as well. Just in front of this, it almost looks like there's some type of a scaled ice carving. Meaning this is something that they would have created so that they had a template to build from. And if you haven't seen it yet, course, here's the eye, the nose, the mouth. The style of the building and the color is unmistakable. This is absolutely a Moai. And how we could have found a Moai this far away from Easter Island is no coincidence. These two peoples are connected. Let me see if I can, well, I'm sure a lot of you have probably already Googled it, so I'm just going to go ahead and not bother with it. But based on, if I can remember right, how big these are, these Moai, they're in that ballpark. I think some are larger than others. These might not be quite as big as that one. But this is a huge missing piece to the puzzle of Antarctica, and not only that, Easter Island. It's my theory that in 1700, prior to 1700, there was a migration, natural migration, of people out of Antarctica through South America. They had been working their way north, and then this cataclysm happened. This huge wall of water came across the Pacific from Japan, out of nowhere, and it destroyed that land bridge. That was, let me bring it up here, Will. I'll just zoom out real quick. That destroyed this land bridge. And it didn't look like this 300 years ago, but it decimated the region. And it cut off the contact, and more importantly, it allowed the ocean from this side to move into this area in a very different way. And weather currents began to swirl around this continent. Now, eastern Antarctica might have already been somewhat cold because of its distance, but over here, this area might not have been. Back in the 1950s, one of the reasons they were sending expeditions down here didn't really have anything to do with the war. There was another allegation that science had made at that time that this was really two land masses. But no one had absolutely figured that out for sure yet. I remember watching one of those old 1950s real films that said this, that they were going to go down there for once and for all to determine whether Antarctica was one place or two places. And now they've decided that it's technically one place, but they call it Western Antarctica and Eastern Antarctica. But this was also explain the hiccup in the Pentagon network that occurs right here. Ooh, way too much. There we go. Because it just dies. Everything else ties in. All of these locations to the Polynesian network tie in nearly perfectly and symmetrically. Just like we see in the network out of Africa, the Northern Network, and the Latin American network, South American network. But right here, there's a hiccup. And strangely enough, we have more evidence now that this culture down here was far more advanced and far more likely to have explored than what's previously thought. I'll, of course, give you this location. You need a laptop, you need a computer, Google Earth Pro, download it, and just pop the coordinates into the search bar, and it'll take you right here. For those of you who have done this already, to get the proper image on this, you're at about eye altitude 422 feet, staring almost north by northeast, I would say probably about 80 degrees. And looking down, it's not hard to find. I mean, you can see it from a mile away. So I will leave it there. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.